All right, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I have another special guest with us in celebration. If you would go ahead and look at the camera and introduce yourself to the people, let them know who you are and what you do.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Bayo Adegbite. I'm actually a system aviation engineer. I work for Viasat. What I do currently right now is I work with the configurations of planes and modem and systems and service activations. I'm also a member of the Emerging 100 of Atlanta and a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated.
Awesome. So you do a lot.
Yes, I do a lot. It's pretty busy around my way.
Right. Yeah. Well, I got to meet you through the Emergent 100.
Yes, ma'am.
And one of the things that stood out to me once we connected online was that you were a mental health advocate.
Yes, ma'am.
And so can you tell me a little bit of why mental health is something that you chose for advocacy?
So the thing for me, I think growing up in the environment I grew up in a Nigerian household.
Okay.
So a lot of things were more structured and culturally based. And as I got older as a man, I think for me, the journey I had trouble with was finding myself. Okay. So as I got older and kind of tried to follow the path of life of what I was supposed to do, I became an adult and realized the things I was taught wasn't really actually who I was. So I started struggling, I would say, a little bit with identity as far as understanding like where I was going and what kind of man I needed to be. And it kind of led me a slope of maybe minor depression, but then I started seeing the same thing affecting my friends. So, wow. So as we got in our mid-20s, early 20s, I started realizing, hey, we're not okay, you know? So I was one of the first people out of my friends to actually take the step to go to therapy. And then so when I started going to therapy, I think the biggest thing I started learning more about myself, I kind of expressed it to them because I believe they were scared of it. Most, people talk about therapy as, going to talk to a shrink, you got to be crazy.
Right.
But my first experience, it really wasn't like that. It was like right now having a casual conversation with somebody that was unbiased, and it was a space I can express myself.
Love it.
So I realized I never really had that too many times in my life. So it was kind of like a soundboard that actually made me feel free. So when I expressed that to more of my friends, I actually ended up getting 4 of my friends who were males, black males, to go to therapy to see the same therapist. So when they started seeing it, when they started seeing her, they're like, man, this is great. But then as I started getting older, I realized the more I started talking to men and showing my vulnerability and transparency, they opened up more to me. And I realized how much it's been that we smile and laugh and joke, but a lot of us are struggling. And you'll notice that the most men who actually laugh and joke the most have a lot of internal wounds inside, and they use that as a mask.
Yes.
Or the men you see that's angry all the time. Right. And sometimes I realized me just telling people my story gave them the transparency and vulnerability to open up towards me. Right. And we would have a real conversation. And I started seeing my friends as my brothers now. So it became more of a family. And accountability partners started growing that way also.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, Bayo, that's awesome. And I really do appreciate you being vulnerable enough now, even in this space, to share it.
Thank you.
There's so many beautiful things that come out of testimonies and people being willing to open up and share those things. One of the things that I heard you say is the cultural aspect of how you grew up. How do you feel, within your culture now? Is your vulnerability and everything a little bit more embraced as you're a little bit older, or do you feel like culturally it's still kind of difficult?
I think now with the younger generation, that's even the ones after us, I would speak on that. I would say it's more open now.
Okay.
Because I would say growing up in our culture, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was restricted. It was more of a path they wanted you to follow because our parents were first generation immigrants.
Gotcha.
So when they first came to America, their primary focus was getting their kids to be educated and be successful and be okay without them because they sacrificed so much to come over here.
Right.
So going along that path, it really wasn't about letting your child be themselves. Is we want to make sure you are set up because we sacrificed so much to get here that you'll be okay after we pass and go.
Right.
So that was their primary focus until you get older as an adult. You realize, okay, am I really doing the things I want to do, or am I doing the things that I feel like I was supposed to do? And I think that's where now the younger generation, the parents now are starting to see it's okay to allow their children to do certain things, allow them to play sports or get into music and artistry. Because now, I'm not gonna lie, I tell people all the time, you look at professional sports now, you see so many Nigerians.
Yeah.
I'm like, we didn't have that back in the day. It was books, books, books. But
right.
Now they have the freedom more to express themselves and be into cultural arts and do different things. And I think it's amazing because I think now as time went on, our parents got older and realized there are so many more ways that you can be successful than just studying. Not saying education is not important.
For sure.
But they're giving their children more space to be themselves and express themselves more.
Right. Wow. That's pretty powerful. And to hear just like that understanding that the younger generation of parents are embracing it. I find a lot of times in working with the youth, a lot the power of the parents, or the community influence in general kind of navigates how they see themselves.
Yes.
And oftentimes dictates how they see themselves. So I know it's really important, especially as a Black man. It has to be important to kind of find your own footing and figure out who you want to be. And so I'm glad that you were able to do that in your journey. So when you go forth and now you have like those brothers that come to you, do you find that it's a similar struggle? Like, is it more of like an identity thing that you find our Black brothers are dealing with, or is it more relationships? Is it more depressive? Like, what are you seeing out here? Because you are a part of an organization. I know you have a lot of brothers.
I think the biggest issue that I would say right now that's facing Black men is, it's kind of like what you said, figuring out their identity based off what they're seeing outside of themselves. I think so many men are struggling right now when they think they have to be something that they, let's say social media or any kind of media is telling them they have to be. Right. So they're struggling trying to live up to this standard that's probably unrealistic. So when you're constantly looking at certain things, pushing different kind of things, trying to get into your mind, because I tell people all the time, your subconscious is one of the most powerful things in the world. You won't even know you're acting a certain way until you actually sit down and actually think about what am I doing. So they're teaching Black men right now, all you need to do is have money, provide for somebody, pay for people's lifestyle, travel, have expensive things.
Right.
None of these things talk about, are you taking care of yourself? So all these things outside of ourselves, nobody's teaching Black men how to take care of themselves until they get around brothers who are actually doing it. Right. So I start realizing when I start talking to younger guys, or I get around more other brothers, and we start talking about what's going on inside of ourselves, outside of the external things, a lot of them feel lost. Yeah. Because now I'm 35, I'm 40, I've never done this work before. So when they start talking to individuals who've done the work, they're like, man, that feels so free to talk to you. All these thoughts I had inside my head, I can't share them with my wife, I can't share with my girl, I can't even tell my kids because they probably don't even understand. Right. But now I'm talking to you, I'm like, maybe I need to figure out who I am now.
Right. So
I would say the biggest thing that's hurting them is the outside influence. And I feel like it's not enough platforms out there that's telling Black men to just be. Be who you are. And I think if we had to push more of that, you probably would see healthier Black men.
I agree.
Because even to talk about relationship issues, a lot of women right now feel like, okay, these Black men don't want to get married, don't be in a relationship. When you actually talk to them, a lot of them feel like they can't even afford to be in a relationship. They feel like, I'm not man enough to even support a family or a woman. Or right now, currently, I need to have all of this set together. Right. Because if I meet a woman, I got to be 100% man. I can't be struggling. I can't have no hardships. I just got to be perfect. So they're running from it.
Right. That's a great point as well. Because of the pressures of society that they place like the value on a person by possessions and what they have. And to your point, even in working with, you'd be surprised how many like young men, like young African American men or Black men that I work with, and when you get them in that therapy room, they do let it all out. Yes. And it's like, oh, it's not even that, like you just said, it's not even that they don't want to be in relationships. It's just like sometimes it's easier to just play the field because maybe sometimes the expectations on, casual situations is not as much stress. Because it's like, if I want to settle down and I want to be with a woman, it's hard if you don't make a certain figure. Yes. She might not even make much. Right? But her expectations is X, Y, and Z, and leading it all the way back to the outward messages that's being projected, like social media and things like that. They don't really talk about finding somebody who just sees you. Like, it's so important to have people that just see you. You don't have to have a performance-based system for love and care, And
I think to speak on your point, I'll elaborate more. I think the issue with a lot of Black men right now, or maybe just men in general, is that relationships to a lot of men looks like responsibility rather than fun. So it's like it's too divided, because when you hear women talk about relationships, they talk about the pros, the cons, the vacations, all the different things. For men, in our mind, is that we have to take care of you now. I got to protect you. I got to provide for you. I got to make sure when you have emotional outbursts, I control myself. When things are going on within you, or you have family issues, or you have problems with your girlfriends, I got to be that standard. I got to be that rock. If we have a kid together, I got to make sure I'm leading my whole entire family. So to some men, I think if they have to find the great things or the fun things about a relationship, they will lean more towards it. Yeah. And let's be honest, relationships are fun for y'all. You know, y'all get to drive nowhere, y'all get days. I'm just joking. But at the same time, for
I get your point though, for real.
Yeah, for men, we have to realize that we can be loved appropriate too. Yeah. And I think our problem is that we don't even tell women how we want to be loved. We listen to what women want, and we're like, okay, I'll provide that for you. But as a woman asking us, hey, how do you want to be loved? What do you want from this relationship? What do you want from a relationship?
Yeah.
What do you need, more importantly?
Yeah.
So it goes back to our original point. If you don't know who you are, you're not going to know how you want to be loved, and you're not going to know what you need from a relationship. You're just going to take whatever society gives you.
Yeah. So. That's a wonderful point. I've actually had that said to me before. I asked, like, a guy, like, so what is it that you need? And he just was like, I don't know. Like, I'm always so worried about making sure you're good. And it's just like, huh? Yeah. Like, it's supposed to be a two-way street. But I think up until that point, he never really had anybody ask him that. Like, well, what do you need? What can I be doing better? You know, and I think to kind of support our men with that, I think there also is responsibility and accountability to be had with women as well. Like, you know, it can't always be just all about us. Like, we want them to be vulnerable and open and, you know, excited to be with us, but are we creating that space for them to just be, like you said? So that's another great point. And I wonder, in your efforts to support your brothers when you're having these conversations, are they having other safe spaces? Are they able to find some safe space in these relationships, or is it just hard all the way around?
I think the thing, as you get older as a man, I would tell people, find people who could be your accountability partners. Okay. You know, you don't have to have the biggest network of friends. You can just have one friend that you can be honest with. And if that helps you, then great. One of my friends, he said the biggest thing he did before he started therapy, he did self-therapy. He started writing down his thoughts and his feelings and everything else in a journal for a long time. And he went to YouTube and found specific topics from doctors and therapists online that addressed the things he was dealing with. So he was kind of scared to go to therapy when we talked about it. But he said him writing down and watching the YouTube and kind of feeling like this person was talking to him made him more comfortable to go see somebody. Wow. So after his first experience, he said his whole first therapy session, he cried the whole time, because he didn't realize he had so much built up inside of him that he never got a chance to tell anybody. So now that we've gotten a chance, this maybe 3 years ago, so now that we talk now, I'm be honest, you can't get him to stop talking about life.
I love it.
I love it. I said, that's the thing, I love it now, because now I'm like, dang, one little idea I put in somebody else's head has probably changed their life. You know, and I tell people all the time, you don't know how many dudes out here are actually struggling with suicide. There are men out here with families, kids, or by themselves who think about offing themselves because they feel like they're not good enough. So to the original point of you're saying, I think the biggest thing now for men or some of my friends is that we all kind of hold each other accountable. But for men who don't have that, you can always start with yourself, writing down your thoughts and ideas and your feelings, and just look at it and observe it. Now, if you're uncomfortable telling people that still, you can always go the internet route. You can go to YouTube and just see, because internet has everything.
Right.
You know, if you're feeling a certain way about something, I always say, hey, use YouTube and find the doctors on there who are speaking on these topics, because they probably can give you some clarity if you don't have anybody to talk to.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah. And so I'm curious, because it seems like since you've been very intentional about your mental health and like supporting the mental health of so many other people, what are you doing currently to still, you know, support your mental health? Because now if you're leading all these other people and helping all these other people, who supports Bayo? Like, what are you doing?
So I am myself currently in therapy, so I do have a therapist.
Okay.
But awesome. I think outside of therapy, I think I had to develop a routine that helps me take care of myself. So when it comes to every day, I try to realize, okay, the 4 check box I need help is going to be physical health, my emotional health, my mental health, and maybe something that's fun that I enjoy doing, like my hobbies. Okay. So physical health, I love working out. You know, that's something I feel like that keeps me balanced. Emotional health, I try to read books and things that kind of stimulate me, that kind of help me get more in touch with myself. Mental health wise, I still write. You know, I still, same thing, I watch YouTube videos that deal with certain mental health things that, hey, at this point in my life, what am I struggling with, or what am I thinking about, what are my ideas? So I kind of like to get different people's perspectives, because I realize I'm not always right.
Right.
And I'm one of those people who feel like, if you show me something better than my perspective, let's roll with it. You know, I'll try it. We'll see where it goes. So I feel like that's the things I do right now. I feel like it's just about balance. You gotta get to a point in life you feel like you have some kind of balance.
Yeah.
Because when you don't, I feel like that's when you start weighing in different, like mental, physical, emotion. You may dip too far into something else and neglect the others.
Yeah.
You know, so that's it. And I do believe if you feel good and you can look in the mirror and look at yourself, that's one of the first steps I tell people. You gotta look at yourself and be happy with who you see. And once you understand and accept, hey, this is who I am, you can build from there, whether you're on the bottom. So
that's very good.
Yeah.
You know, another thing that what I'm hearing too is your desire. You know, like your desire to consistently be better or feel better. You know, one thing I find is for a lot of people, they don't always know like the first step, or they may lack the motivation, and just self-awareness in general. Like, hey, I don't feel okay, and I know something is off, and I'm tired of pretending to be okay. So what are the action steps that I need to take? Which is why I appreciate what you said about writing it down. So maybe writing down those feelings, or writing down what those struggles are. And then, like you said, going and researching and seeing what I can do to better those areas, and kind of finding that desire and that motivation to get going. Because once you get the desire to get going, you're in the right direction, you know? But that for some people, especially I find for men who have already felt kind of beaten down by life and society, it's hard for them to even get that desire to start.
You know, the first thing my therapist, one of the first questions he asked me, because I switched over from a woman therapist to a black man.
Okay.
And I feel like that's when I really started to kind of take off and started seeing certain things, because it was more relatable.
Nice.
But I think the first question he ever asked me was, who are you comparing yourself to? And I think when I had to sit there and I couldn't even answer, I was like stuttering. I was like, he said, you ain't got to answer right now. Just a lot of us don't even answer ourselves the question, who are you comparing yourself to? Is it your father? Is it your brother? Is it somebody you've seen online?
Wow.
And whoever you compare it to, shut it down.
Wow.
If you have issues with social media, not saying delete your account, delete the apps for a while.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Start looking at yourself and stop looking at the things you're comparing yourself to, because you don't know these people's lives. But a lot of us as men, I'll say, like at the beginning of what your statement is, they got to ask themselves the question, who are you comparing yourself to?
Yeah.
Because I promise you that's probably the root of some of the issues they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Or compare yourself to somebody who wasn't there. Because if you didn't have a father that was in the house, your image of manhood at times is going to be maybe a little distorted. So you're going to find anything to grasp on to look for manhood.
Yeah.
So I think it starts there, asking yourself that question, who are you comparing yourself to?
Wow. That brings about another great point. We could be here for hours, Bayo, because that brings about another great point. Just the lack of fathers in our, households. And when we talk about identity for black men, obviously things I know is picture perfect in 2-parent homes, right? Yeah. But when you have I think for a boy growing up, and obviously this is just me going off of what I would infer and research, but like I would think for a black boy, any boy, not having that example, not having someone to kind of pour into you and teach you what it is to be a man, teach you how to even treat women, teach you how to love yourself. When you have them growing up, what do they rely on?
That's true.
You know, it's society, it's social media, and it's what girls want, you know? So that in itself is just another conversation about kind of figuring out how we can foster more families, or even if we can't have couples stay together, right? There's reality. Some people just find out along the lines they don't work. But having a community where they can have mentors and people that step in and help them develop what their identity is. Maybe it's like, okay, well, all I have is mom. And mom's not into sports. I don't even know if I like them, right? But then you have somebody, let's say a neighborhood coach who comes in and kind of helps. I think the ultimate point here is just having more community and more influence, healthy influence to kind of help develop these boys. Because what do we do when they don't have fathers? You know?
It's two-sided, because I tell people sometimes the community that some of these boys are raised in are more dysfunctional than their own homes.
Very true.
So when he steps out of the house, as you said, his mom doesn't know what's going on. She don't like sports and everything else like that. When he steps outside of the house, that community that he's involved in is going to influence him who he needs to be as a man. So I think when it boils down to, even if it's a single father raising a child or a single mother raising a child, the parent is going to have to be very intentional about how this black boy is going to be raised.
For sure.
You know, because at the end of the day, if we're going to be the pillars of our family, we got to know even what that looks like. Now, if I don't have that in my house and outside I see some of the worst things, it's sometimes, like you said, every kid from those environments, sometimes they'll have their perspective, no, I don't want to be like this.
Right.
But 9 times out of 10, you're going to see an individual like, yo, this looks fun, this looks cool. As little boys, we gear towards what's fun and cool.
Right.
You know, so we're going to see certain things in environments, and whether it's positive or negative, I feel like the parent has to be intentional about putting their child around people and things that's going to influence them. That's, for me personally, shameless plug, being a part of Emerging 100, when these kids come around us and we come our mentorships and our students, they see positive influence of black men. We know we're not way more older than them, but they see people that can look at as peers, like, okay, if they're doing these type of things, I like this. You know, and I told them in even my interview before I joined, I said what really sealed me to want to join the organization was I was sitting next to a child doing one of the MLK events, and he said, I love y'all events, man. These are one of the things my mom lets me come to, and you guys are fun and cool. And he's probably like 8 years old.
Aww.
You know, and I was like, these people really doing something out here.
Yeah.
So to me personally, I feel like that's when it starts. You have to be intentional about your child, girl or boy. Right. You have to be intentional about them being around things that can influence their mind to be more positive. Yeah. They may not soak everything in, but if you think about it as an adult now, there were brief moments in your life that you would never forget.
For sure.
You got to create those for your child.
Yeah.
So
great message, and I can appreciate organizations like the Emerging 100. That's one of the reasons why I've already known Tunde, but one of the things I can appreciate about it is the things that they're doing for the kids. Yes. Because let's just be honest, a lot of things we as adults do and how we think, they're learned behaviors from things that we were around when we were younger. So it's not asinine to think if we keep them around positive things, if we keep them around healthy things and healthy examples, we have a higher probability of raising highly functioning adults, right? But if you keep them in chaos, you keep them in confusion, you have them around a lot of negativity, well then what's the probability, right? So really great. Let me check on our time. I'm the worst with this time stuff. So we're doing pretty decent. So I guess one thing I would like to ask, of course, before we wrap, because it sounds like you yourself have a pretty impactful story. If there was a young man, older man, whomever, who is watching this, and they feel like they are hopeless, what would you say to them? What would you say to them as far as mental health to kind of help them get that desire that we talked about?
That's a really good question. I think for me is that one of the things I learned from therapy is always look within before you look outside. The first question I would tell you is ask that young man, who told you that you was hopeless? You know, is it you telling yourself that? And if it's you telling yourself that, you have to start looking into where did it start?
Right.
You know, I feel like the biggest, most important thing therapists do when they first start is they start with your childhood.
Yep.
And I'll tell somebody, hey, how were you raised? What environments were you raised? Did you see a lot of hopelessness around you? What are you trying to, like, once again, what are you comparing yourself to? You know, so that's the biggest thing is I would tell anybody, before you look outside of anywhere, if you're feeling hopeless, you got to look within yourself. Now, on top of that, I would love for them to say, hey, either I could be or somebody could find, you need to find a mentor and you need to talk to somebody. Yeah. As I said earlier, therapy isn't always affordable to most people, but it has to go down to what you talked about earlier, having the desire, wanting to be better.
Right.
Now, pulling somebody out of hopelessness, depression, is probably one of the hardest things to do because it's you against you. You know, positive affirmations. You got to tell yourself you're beautiful. You got to tell yourself you're great. You got to tell yourself you can do this. You got to tell yourself. I tell people all the time, you feel hopeless, look how far you've come. Go back and look at all the things you've accomplished. Now, go through school. You graduated high school. You know how many people don't be able to do that?
Right.
You're able to drive. Start looking at the small accomplishments, and when you start putting those small accomplishments in their mind, they start realizing, like, I'm not really a hopeless person. I can do these things. I've done things before.
Right.
You've made it this far.
Right.
So I would start there. Just going back to the past, positive affirmations, and positive thoughts and memories of things they've accomplished. Yeah. Because hopelessness usually comes from a thought of failure. So that's
a word, Bayo. That's nice.
I appreciate that.
Well, I really appreciate our time together. I've found the next time I do these things, I'm gonna make these interviews longer because
you out of time already?
so much, right, exactly. You see how that rolled?
Yeah.
But a lot of times I come in with questions, and then the more I speak to you all, it's just so many beautiful things kind of come out of it that I want to go even deeper into. But in respect to time, I just want to thank you for taking the time, especially for being here and maybe not feeling your best earlier, and to just commend you on just the sheer vulnerability. And I will say my family is Trinidadian, and I can resonate with just, the culture of structure. This is what they want for us. This is how it should be. And so having to, of course, appreciate when they do the best that they can and what they're giving us, but also just kind of unlearning the things that did not serve us. Yes. And you taking those action steps to find you. And for some of us, that's a lifelong journey, to be honest.
It never stops.
But you've taken that desire to be and do better, and you are not only better yourself, but you are going forth and you're impacting our leaders of tomorrow. Yep. So I just want to commend you for that.
Thank you again.
Because it's not like something you're obligated to do. You're not getting paid to do this. Like, it's coming from your heart. So definitely shout out to you for that. And I hope that we all continue to work together, myself, Emerging 100, you, because we are literally giving somebody a better tomorrow by doing these things. So thank you. I would like for you to look at the camera and just let the people know where they can find you.
Hi, I do. You can find me on Instagram, Bayo1914, BAYO1914. You can find me on Facebook, Bayo Adegbite. And you can find me at Emerging 100 events in Atlanta. We doing things every month, every week. You'll see us around.
All right, y'all have a passport event coming up, right?
Yes, ma'am. We have a passport. It was not a passport event, but
it says passport event on the RSVP.
Well, it's a networking event right now for the 100 Black Men of Atlanta conference this weekend. So nice. it will be from Saturday from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. So it's an open event. Everybody to come enjoy themselves, network with people. Hopefully see you there.
Yeah, I plan to be there.
Okay. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bayo, and thank you all for tuning in. As always, I hope that there was something that was said that was impactful, that can touch you, and if not, share it, and maybe it will be a blessing to someone else. So thank you guys always, and see you next time. Awesome. You killed it. Hey, had a nerve to talk about